Yeah, I'm sick today though. It was a tough
Oh,
morning, so I'm
oh,
fighting it.
sorry.
It's okay.
I
Been
feel like
worse.
every time there's a back to school, viruses and bacteria start floating around.
I usually am pretty good at avoiding stuff, but I was in the toilet throwing up a while this morning,
Oh my
so it's
God. That sounds
TMI. So
bad.
it's okay. Um, well, thanks for doing this. We appreciate this.
No, of course. Yeah, excited to be here.
I just got a new LED light, so I look like all the other YouTubers. Isn't that classic?
That's great. I've
Yeah.
got some that look like that, but they're for plant growing because I can't seem to keep plants alive in Seattle unless I've got some grow lights on them. So yeah, I've got some in my living room too.
The faux sunlight. Yeah, you need that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Hey, Jeffrey, welcome.
Hey, Don.
Jeffrey's one of our newest members. Hello, say hi to May May.
Hi, Maybe.
Nice to meet you. Hi.
Pleasure.
All right, so we got 2 minutes. May we'll let people filter in, and then we'll kick this off.
Perfect.
Um, when's the last time I saw you? I guess it was probably what, a year and a half
Yeah,
ago.
it's been a while. I know we exchanged a couple emails, but yeah, I think about a year.
Have you been promoted, or what's good with your job title and all that?
Still the same role, but we're focused on lifestyle interests now, which we can talk about a little bit more. We had little bit of a shift internally in terms of like priorities and whatnot. So yeah.
I was holding on to that bucking Bronco the whole time I was there. Yeah, I think this will be really cool. I think a lot of people have questions around where they can resource meta. And so being able to give some highlights would be really helpful for a lot of
Yeah,
us.
of course.
We have 16 right now. It starts in a minute, so we'll wait a little bit more. Anyone want to step up and say a fun fact for the day or something that went well in their life today? I'm a little sick. Sorry if you can hear it in my voice.
I can say something. Hey Don, hey everybody. So it turns out that so we're building Float VR. It's a mindfulness app and meditation app, and we just learned from one of our collaborators, who's a renowned person in EEG testing and so on, worked with Muse and so on. They did some initial testing, and I just heard today that the results are good and that they can see float influencing the brain differently with different modes. So that's pretty exciting.
How
Cool.
long was this study?
It's this is just a preliminary thing from their lab, just with 5 people. So it's like a preliminary thing, but that, for him convinced him that we should, move forward to a larger research. We already had one research that was very positive, but it had no EEG part. It only had the, you know, people reporting their feelings. So
That's awesome. We've got a decent amount of healthcare. Maybe is that something we can touch on today? I know that's not the total focus, but
Yeah,
I
we
know
had it
you and
recently
I did a
or
lot of wellness.
I'm not working on health and wellness anymore. I used to, so I can share a little bit what I do know. So yeah, maybe we can touch on a little bit, but I won't have the latest of like priorities and whatnot.
Yeah,
yeah,
that was I think one thing I wanted to go through, Jerome, that'll be cool too, is like the evolution of kind of what we were focused on at Meta. I think that's really important to get the context there as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
All right, so I'm gonna kick us off here. All right, so May, welcome. Hello everybody. If you're joining late, I'm a little sick today, but I'll be fine. Feel much better now. Um, May was the person on my team when I was at Meta who her and I were both doing the same role. May was inevitably much better at it than me, and she was basically the boss of the team. Like I would ask Anand to do something, and then Anand's response is go get approval from May, and if May approved it, then I could do it. So May basically ran the show. Um, I what I really found fascinating and impressive around her was that she would go out of her way to make sure that my deal memos were correct. Like she would go as far as to finding little spelling mistakes, which I appreciated a lot. And then at the same time, I think she did like 3 or 4 times the amount of deals while we were there. And I assume at this point you've done like I don't know, 30 plus deals, whatever it is. So May's basically seen like every startup in the space, and has either helped fund them directly or helped push them through to the right program. So she's like literally one of the best resources in all of Meta. Everybody there likes her. She works with the games team. She's worked with, all the different players, even though her focus is the lifestyle accelerator. So May was the number one most impressive person on the team to me, and I'm very thankful she's willing to come here and chat with us. Um, this kind of started off where, they just launched the accelerator program at Meta for lifestyle apps. And so that was how this conversation started. But I think what would be really healthy is to get a little bit of background, May, from yourself around, you've been at Meta almost 4 years now. Before that, you were at Microsoft for 4 years. Can you maybe talk about like when you joined 4 years ago, which was what, 2019, 2020, around there. Can you talk about like how Meta's focus has evolved, looking at it from the lens of different categories? I assume, games was number one, but then talk through kind of how Meta's prioritized the different types of apps, because that would be good context. And then last point, we'll open up the floor to Q&A. This is supposed to be very similar to what we did earlier with Anon, where Q&A is the focus here. So please think of questions, and then let's get the open flowing conversation going once we've gone through a little bit of the intro. But I'll stop there. And maybe you could walk us through like games and what's kind of happened over the last 3 years from Meta's perspective when it comes to categories and what you care about.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Don, for the intro. And really great to be here today. As Don mentioned, my role is strategic content within Reality Labs on the content team. My focus is now what we call like lifestyle interests, which I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, I've been at Meta for about 3.5 years now. I joined the applications team when it was first born, so before we had anything there, and that's why I was sort of mentoring Don, because I was there earlier than he was. Not to say that I was better, I was just there earlier. But yeah, when I first joined,
you were better
in 2021. Quest had just launched not that long ago, and we were starting to see a lot of like potential with the device, especially in games. But we hadn't really seen much product market fit in other categories. And so they started up this new team called the applications team to really go figure out like what are some of those next new categories that can become really big experiences on Quest. And so our job was to figure out like, okay, what are some of these categories that we have some conviction in? Let's go try it and test and experiment some of these new things and see what sticks. And so over the last like 3 years on the team, we experimented with a bunch of different things, education, work and productivity, creator tools, fitness and wellness. And it became clear pretty quickly that like there was some semblance of life in fitness and wellness early on. And so we started digging deeper into that space over the last 3 years. I think we can pretty confidently say now that like it's a thing. Supernatural is an amazing experience, a lot of subscribers. FedXR, same thing. We're even starting to see some big brands start popping into the space as well. Les Mills, Headspace, Aloe even are starting to experiment. And so, yeah, we feel really great about like the trajectory of fitness. And so the goal there is really to start deepening it and like to grow it. One area as part of some recent like strategic work we'll be doing, that we believe there's another next sort of phase of evolution similar to what we saw in fitness, is what we're calling interests and hobbies. This is an area where, people have a bunch of interests and hobbies outside of headset that they like to do already. We know that fashion is something that people are really interested in, cooking, shopping, arts and crafts, DIY, home design, that sort of thing. And with the advent of mixed reality, we believe that there is an opportunity for us to grow that space in the same way that we do with fitness. And so that's the new team that I'm on now, focusing on what we're calling lifestyle interests to help figure out like what are some of the new categories that can be big hits on Quest.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think the delineation between games and applications is something that took me a while to understand when I was there. But I think, the way that Meta thinks about stuff from what I picked up was like, okay, here's a theory, games is working, let's fund it, get things going, and then move on to the next category of what we think is going to work. That second category is wellness, fitness, meditation apps, things of that stuff. And then once that's got kind of legs under itself, they move on to the next thing that they believe the ecosystem's missing. And so right now that is the lifestyle accelerator stuff. Am I sharing this slideshow here?
Yep,
Everyone
we can see your slides.
All right, cool. So yeah, so maybe I think like these are the three programs that I'm aware of, May. There's the START program, the Ignition Fund, and then the Lifestyle Accelerator Fund. So can you also, just so everybody has a clear understanding of how Meta structures its org, can you talk about these three programs? And I'm not sure if RFPs are a fourth one here or not, but I know that was a question I saw in school as well. Maybe you could chat on those three programs.
Yeah, sure. So just some context, as Don mentioned, in order to build an ecosystem here, we know that developers need support from Meta. And so historically, we've done that in two ways. There's the START program, which has been around since before I joined the company. And that's sort of as he mentioned, like a one-to-many program where we offer resources and some programming and just like general community support to help new founders build applications on Quest. This is typically for folks that are a little bit earlier in their development lifecycle, maybe just starting to prototype, don't have a lot of experience with Quest or Unity and Unreal, and just really need some help getting started. So that's been around for a while, and we're continuing to do that because it's been really valuable for the community. Historically, we've also run what we call the RFPs, request for proposals, to identify founders that are looking to build new apps on Quest or games on Quest, and we funded that as well. The new evolution of those RFPs is what Don showed on the slide earlier, which is the accelerator and ignition. So this is like the new format that we're doing for the RFPs. We're trying to do it in a way that reaches more people, that more people can apply directly and access it. And instead of fully funding, entire production apps, which, can be really expensive and cost, take 2 to 3 years to build, what we're doing is a more of an iterative approach. So we want to help founders get started and prototype and learn what's working, what's not, with some seed funding to start. And that's what the Ignition and Accelerated programs will do for Games and Accelerator. And once, they graduate from the program and they this sort of proof of life and there's something there, then founders will have a better understanding of like what really they need to go build to expand on that and blow it out to become a real big product. So yeah, that's the new evolution of it. Ignition is focused exclusively on games. They're targeting what we're calling more mid-core or enthusiast games. So just to give you some parallels in like the current PC world, something like Call of Duty, we would consider a core game. That is not what this is looking for. Their Ignition program is looking for things more like Among Us, casual games that people play, but may not consider themselves like hardcore gamers. The Lifestyle Accelerator is focused on non-gaming and non-entertainment lifestyle use cases. We're excluding fitness and wellness from that just because, as I mentioned earlier, we've already proven that there's a lot of potential in that vertical. Really, the goal of the accelerator is to identify some of the net new verticals that we haven't really seen before. So Piano Vision showed us that, there's a lot of potential, I think, for music learning on the platform. What are some of the other, categories that people may want to engage with on Quest?
Awesome. All right, so I think that's a good lay of the land. We want to run this as a Q&A. So who's the brave soul that wants to raise their hand and go first here? I will give it a quick minute so everyone can think through that. I know there's some people in the audience who have applied May already.
Okay.
And so they have questions around what are some of the steps? What can they do to prepare? There's
Sure.
some people in the audience that have messaged me that have yet up to apply and they're waiting until this conversation so they can get some more information. So just to give you context there, it's kind of all over the place.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, Georgie. Hello. Thanks for
Hi.
talking last in the previous event with Inga from Shapes XR and first here.
Oh,
Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, hi, Mimi. We
Hi,
are
Georgie.
like in process of applying to accelerator.
Yeah.
I have a question about the funding. So we are already we have some pre-seed funding. It's not enough to build the product that we are applying to accelerator. But in the accelerator rules, it says that you kind of need to come up with a budget. And do you have any, and I haven't found any benchmarks or something that, what's the proportion of budget of the project budget we need can be covered by Meta, by the program, and what is there any maximum cap of funding that we can get during the program?
Yeah, great question. So we're evaluating funding on a case-by-case basis because every team and every type of application might need different things in order to build it out. So what we're asking teams to do is outline for the 6-month period, for the thing that you want to build in that 6 month, how many resources do you need and what's the cost of that associated with it? So for example, if you need like 2 engineers and maybe an artist and maybe a producer, like delineate that out with their rate, and that produces the total budget. Of that budget, if you already have existing funding from VC or maybe angel investors or self-funded, deduct that from the total budget, which will give us, how much you need Meta to fund in order to produce the app that you want to do. There is no ceiling right now. Again, we're doing it case by case. Obviously, we do have a budget for the whole program in total. And so when we review all the applications and select the finalist, if the budget is too high for us to support, we will go back to you and help you scope it down to something more reasonable. But right now, I don't want to limit teams with a budget just because, yeah, we're not capping it per team. We have a per pool or total pool budget.
Yeah, got it. And then Len, one extra question is about like this alcohol topic that I was asking before. Like in the cooking, if like this bartender, etc. Like if we go with mixing of cocktails, is it possible to apply with this, or better to exclude it because of it's like 18 plus content?
Yeah, so from a content policy guideline perspective, we don't have any limitations on like alcohol as a content type. That said, what I will say is when you apply, I would be really clear about who your audience is and like why you want to target that audience. Right now in Quest, some of our most retentive and engaged users are young adults or teens. And so if you build something that excludes, the majority of our existing audience, it'll be hard for you to get a user base with, the people that already have devices. So I would personally stray away from things that are just 18 plus, just because of, who's using our devices today. Although of course it's not a limitation based on our policies and guidelines.
So better to exclude.
I would stay away from it for now, sort of as an audience strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Thank you, Georgie. All right, Cam. Hello.
Hey,
Spotlight
what's
you
up,
here.
Meg?
Hey, Cam.
This is Cam from Never Met, and my question, I imagine you've reviewed a handful of these applications now, and I'm wondering, what are founders getting wrong in their application, or what are they not getting, or what are they frequently missing, or what do you wish that they included more in their application? Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is not just like feedback for the accelerator. This is some common things that we see when we look at pitches and applications in general. But oftentimes we get founders come in with a pitch that seems cool and fun, but they don't explain like why somebody would actually use it and who they're targeting, which is really important because there's no real point in building something that seems fun and cool if you actually don't know who you're building for, what their needs are, and what they actually want. And so that, I think, to me is like the big missing piece for a lot of founders. The other thing that we see missing is like specificity in what exactly you're going to build. A lot of people have like these grand visions of like the product that they want to go build, but they're not specific about, okay, given the amount of time, the amount of resources I have, here are the things that we want to prioritize first because of XYZ. Because that also ties into the budget that we'll ask for. And when we evaluate all your pitches, we'll take a look at like specifically what you're planning to accomplish to evaluate whether or not we think the team size that you have feels appropriate for it, or it feels too ambitious or not ambitious enough. That helps us gauge, the team's efficiency and ability to produce. So yeah, I would say those two things are the biggest mistakes I see. And I also want to see founders that this is not a requirement, but oftentimes it's good to see founders that have a reason for building this, right? Because that gives them passion for the product. And so if you have, if you're building a dating app, for example, why are you building that dating app? If there's a story or some sort of reason you're doing it, if you previously were in the dating industry, or maybe you had a personal experience, that helps me build confidence that what the problem you're solving is, what the user needs are, and you know how to address it. Because when you go into something cold without context, it's really hard to really understand, unless you do deep user research and studies, what exactly people want and how they're going to react to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And one follow-on question there, Maymay. So when you do go pitch a business, why is that so important to have founder fit when you're pitching the story to other people?
Yeah. Are you talking about me or when the founders are pitching the story?
You in particular, like getting buy-in from the rest of the team. Why is that so important?
Got it. Yeah. So so just to give some context behind what Don is saying, when we review pitches, I'm not the only one that makes the decision. Usually I review it and work with the founder to shape it, but ultimately we need to get approval from our leadership team to fund it, right? And so we're not just convincing me, we're convincing our leadership and executive team that this is something that's worth backing. And so when we look at pitches, we're not only looking at like, is this idea cool? We're looking at, is this idea good? And do we have the right team to build it? Because oftentimes I could get 5 or 10 pitches on the same concept for cooking, on the same concept for dating. And sometimes the thing that, makes or breaks it is like, which team is better? From a technical perspective, do they have the right experience to build it? From a product lens perspective, do they have experience in that industry, in that category or something else? And so, yeah, both factors matter a lot. It's not just about the idea, but also our conviction and the team to execute it.
Yep. Awesome. I think that's helpful context because there was ideas I loved that I couldn't get approved through. And so it's even if you love the idea and you want to go through with it, it's sometimes a dead end, which is tough. All right. Raj, come on up here. Let me spotlight you.
Hello, Mimi.
Hello.
Hi, Raj.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I have actually 2 questions. One question is, do you need a team while applying, or is a solo founder okay with getting the team later on? And my second question is with the access to the Quest camera. Is it like, we know that the Quest camera is not accessible directly, but there are some Unity plugins that were created that give access to the camera, not directly, but indirectly. So is it okay to use that?
Yep. Okay. Great question. So on the team, when we evaluate pitches, we're really looking to understand who's going to build it. And so if you are planning to have a team, we will want to understand who you're thinking about building it with. Sometimes, in some cases, like until they get funding, the teams are not confirmed because I know that it takes some time for people to, maybe want to commit to doing something full time. But at the minimum, we do want to see like your tentative options and names and people who would be interested if it were funded. Because ultimately, like, for example, if you've got Unity and Real skills, but you don't have art skills, we will want to see who on your team you're going to bring on that can supplement your skill sets to create the app.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. In terms of like camera access, right now there is no officially supported way to get camera access, unfortunately, for some privacy reasons. Our team is working through ways that we can give developers signal on what's in a room's environment. So for example, giving them access to the room layout and whatnot. I know that there have been some hacks circulating recently. I think the team is looking into that to figure out whether or not, that's compliant with policy. I would not recommend doing that just because it's not an official way right now, and it may it may not live for a very long time. So yeah, for now, unfortunately, we're not giving access, but we're working on ways to give developers at least some sort of signal to have context on the room.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. All right. Sid, hello. Welcome. Let me get you up here.
Hey,
Hi,
Don.
Sid.
Hey, Meme. Hey, good to meet you. And Don, hope you're feeling better.
Yep.
Meme, my question is really about, so we're a VR AR startup focused specifically in healthcare. So we're developing XR solutions that help hospitalized patients feel better and recover faster using immersive tech. Our deployments mostly have been within healthcare settings, but we do have a couple of projects in the pediatric space between the age group of, let's say, 8 to 15, and they don't necessarily fit a proper dictionary definition of lifestyle, but it does involve things like skill building, about not just emotion regulation, but even navigating grocery stores or personal finance and managing all of that. Would you kind of consider that to be a category for y'all? Because we are seeing a lot of requests from the pediatric hospital that we're working with in Memphis which is St. Jude's, and they're wanting to kind of figure out a way where we can have these headsets be sent out to the patients and their families, and they can engage in these skill sets, and then they can come home into the hospitals with the headset and can give it back to St. Jude, for example.
Yeah, great question. So maybe I can tackle this with just like how we're defining lifestyle in general and sort of the categories that we're thinking about for the Accelerate as a whole, because we get a lot of this question, and lifestyle is a pretty broad term and not a like a well understood one. So we get this question a lot. The way that we're thinking about lifestyle is essentially things that people want to do in their consumer leisure time outside of games, entertainment, and fitness. So the motivation here is like understanding what people are willing to do on their own when they're not told to by maybe an authority figure. So either a parent, a teacher, a professional doctor, or something like that. And the primary reason right now is just because in terms of our go-to-market strategy for Quest, we're really targeting consumers first. We don't yet have a really robust GTM channel for enterprises or healthcare yet. Healthcare is an area that like I think there's so much potential for, but there's a lot of like regulation that we have to get across in order to sell into that industry, FDA approvals and whatnot. And so it's just not an area that we're quite yet ready to tackle. So unfortunately, something like that, I don't think would be eligible for the accelerator yet, but maybe in the future at some point, we can consider it. It's definitely something that we've been thinking about across the teams and trying to understand what it takes to get into that space. It's just, as you know, a regulated industry and so much harder to jump through.
Yeah, I think the kind of add to a little bit more color to that, the lines are a little bit blurred between an authority figure telling the kid what to do versus creating a game that is inherently so satisfying for the kid, so that they're kind of learning these skill sets, because the population that we're working with are population that might have, some sort of learning issues. So even basic things like going to the grocery store and navigating and buying products can be very challenging for them. But if you gamify that in a certain way, you're not telling them what to do something, but they're just kind of doing it. So it's not necessarily an authority figure telling them what to do, but really it's inherently the game itself is rewarding for them. And that's really what we're trying to position this as versus trying to so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you believe that your product will appeal to a consumer on their own, not for some sort of alternative reason, like sort of the chocolate covered broccoli analogy. If it's not something that you're trying to feed them because of an alternative reason, but because they're doing it just because they want to do it, that I think we would consider an interest sort of lifestyle experience. But if it's for something else and you're just making it a little bit more interesting, your phone or more palatable, to me, the end goal is still something else. And so that wouldn't be considered a lifestyle interest category.
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And let's say, just going with the thought exercise, for a company that is, pure healthcare and really doesn't need to be on the App Store because they're generating revenue from customers, what is kind of your recommended solution for companies in that boat where they're more focused on just direct revenue from a larger enterprise?
Yeah, so we have a different team, not the content org, because we focus on apps that ship to the store. But we do have another like B2B, like a partnership management team that works on clients for Quest for Business. I'm not really sure on the criteria that they have to like select the partners that they work with. But whether or not you work with them, I think the best approach would be to use Quest for Business to deploy your headsets to customers. It's basically a management layer that companies can use to manage headsets and manage content that they deploy on the headset at scale. So that's our preferred solution. And yeah, you don't need to ship anything on the store for that. You can just use release channels if you don't want to ship anything outward facing.
Awesome, thank you. Jeff, hello. Come on up here.
Howdy, y'all. Hi, Mei. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, so really interesting. It seems like we've got a bit of a similar background. I also spent some time at Microsoft on the HoloLens team before starting the startup I'm at now. So what we're doing is we're building a consumer app that's targeted to help people preserve their memories and their legacy through interactive digital twins. So we're targeting kind of augmented mixed reality as our like marquee experience. It's a lot more immersive when you can have these face-to-face conversations, feeling like somebody is right there in the room with you. But we're also kind of targeting other mobile devices like handheld tablets, because it's where just most people are at the moment. So I'm kind of wondering, like, with your evaluation criteria, like, how important is it to really highlight the mixed reality part of it versus kind of like what what I would say the kind of core value proposition of the app is?
Yeah, good question. So if you looked at the accelerator website that we launched, we do talk about like MR, AI hands. And so I get a lot of questions like, are all of these required? You know, is it optional? So let me just answer the question sort of from a technology perspective, like what are we looking for, including MR? In general, we have a hypothesis that lifestyle applications that integrate with your everyday life through MR and hands and AI have a lot of potential. When we talk to some of our sort of focus groups and potential customers, what we're hearing a lot of is, you know, they have these interests and hobbies that they do outside of headset, and they're really interested in using, you know, technology to augment the experience that they have and to help them with the current interests and hobbies that they have, but they don't want it to replace it with a fully digital experience. And so from that respect, like MR, I think has a huge advantage and potential. It's not required, however, for the program. So if you have a scenario or use case where MR just doesn't make sense, and your core value prop really is in VR, we're still going to evaluate it and consider it for the accelerator. We just think that in most cases, MR does have a role to play. And so if we believe that, you know, MR has a role to play in the category that you're considering, we would urge you or push you to integrate with MR as well. And that goes the same with like hands and AI. You know, we're not requiring any developers to use AI and hands. AI is particularly like experimental, and you know, we know a lot of developers are using it, but we haven't seen anyone use it really at scale in production on Quest just yet. So it's an area that we're excited about innovating in, especially to help save cost, you know, developing content, which can be really, really expensive. But it's not required. It's really up to like the category and if it makes sense for a use case.
Sure. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure.
I will say, I think, you know, one of the ways to think about funding from Meta as well is that, you know, Meta's putting all their money on the line to go figure out what are the cool new visions of where XR goes. And so if there is a new technology like AI or like hands, even, you know, having some sort of story around that with your pitch is helpful. Because Meta is looking for like, what are the companies we can bring on stage at Connect and show off some of the futuristic things that are happening. So although it's not required, I do think if you can work that way into your product or your pitch for basically a cheap development cost and it's effective, then it is a good use of your time to do.
Yeah, that's a great point, Don. Like, I wouldn't say build MR just because we're looking for it. Really think about where it's useful and helpful, but we are usually looking for things that pushes the boundaries of the new technology that we're offering. So if you can figure out a way to make MR, you know, in an application in a really innovative way, Piano Vision was a great example of this. When people saw commercials, they just got it, right? Are there other scenarios like that where it's a really great, you know, implementation where people can just understand what you're trying to do with the application once they see it? Like those are the types of things that our marketing team is really excited about showcasing and that we would be really interested in funding as well.
Yeah, and Piano Vision was basically XR where it would overlay the notes on your actual keyboard. And so goes without saying that was very visual and viral. And so I think it was an easy one for Meta to opt into with that one. All right, Alex, hello. Let me get you here.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. You have been killing it. We should all give you a round of applause.
Thanks,
You've
Don.
been tell us about the VR Chat Award real quick, or kind of that last 2 months of your journey.
I started making a VR chat level because I wanted to start building a portfolio. It was a flying ship in the sky. I was going to make it a coffee game, and then I realized that everyone was just jumping off the ship, so I turned it into a flying game instead. And so I launched it on VR chat this Monday in the community labs, and in less than a week, I got my first 1,000 views. I got a bunch of kids to play test it. They really, really love it, told me good things. They are children, so most of the feedback comes down to it's good, but you know, it feels great.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. So
yeah, and you're doing it I was just gonna say you're doing it all right. Like you're doing it yourself. You're doing it in public on Twitter. It's been very impressive to see. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of what you're up to because it's pretty cool to see the progress. Sorry.
Thanks, Don. I've learned a lot from this school community, so it's been very helpful to me.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I had two quick questions. First of all, I thought Ignition sounded like a good fit for what I'm trying to do, and I just Googled it, and it seems like the deadline is this Sunday. Is that still true?
Good question. I'm not super sure because I'm not managing that program, but I'm happy to just quickly ask after this call. And I'll let Don know what I find out. One difference between Ignition and the accelerator, other than the category difference, is they were also accepting applications on a rolling basis. So until their fund dries up, they were still going to accept applications. For the accelerator, we're looking at all the applications holistically and then making decisions after the deadline has passed. So yeah, let me do a quick check just to see where they are in the progress, and if the fund has already dried up, and I'll get back to Don on that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and it was posted a while ago, so things might have changed.
Yeah.
But secondly, I am making a game called Balloon Bats. It's heavily inspired by Gorilla Tag. It's a social multiplayer game where you fly around using your arms as wings. And I think I'm getting some traction, but I look on the Quest store right now and I see 500 million Gorilla Tag fan games. Does it hurt me as an applicant if I say it's another Gorilla Tag, a spin on Gorilla Tag?
So I guess it depends on what you mean by does it hurt you? Like obviously I think when there are a lot of things that are very similar, you're gonna have to figure out how to stand out. Penguin Paradise is an example of something that sort of followed in the footsteps of Gorilla Tag that has actually done really, really well on the platform. I think that at least with Quest and games like that, one of the key things for success is really building a community beforehand, offline, and really engaging with that community, because ultimately these social games are spread word of mouth by friends. And so if your friends are in it, they're going to tell their friends to come in. If they feel like the creators are really invested in them and like listening to them and taking their feedback, they're going to come back. So building a community on Discord and any other channels that you feel like they are present is going to be really important to ensuring that you stand out of the crowd.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And Mei, you were the one that found gym class back before it had launched. So, and that's one of the best examples, I think. Can you talk about their Discord strategy and how they kind of got everything going early on?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Gym Class is another really social game, sports experience. They're free to play. But yeah, they're one of the top sports apps on the platform right now. They really got their start because again, they had a really active Discord channel and they were really engaged with the community. So the founders are often inside the app, talking directly to people, asking them how they feel, what they want, what they like, what they don't like. They also have a really great way of like engaging the community to create content on social that has allowed them to become viral on TikTok and other channels to further like acquire an audience. So for example, they have, I believe they have a tool that they allow certain creators on their platform that are whitelisted to capture in-game content. And then they allow them to like edit that on TikTok and spread the word. When we ask our users, how do you find out about new games or new applications on Quest? The majority of them say that they're not looking for it on the mobile app. They're not looking for it in the store, in the headset. They're finding them on TikTok and YouTube. Those are the two primary places that people are finding things, and Reddit. And so if you're not engaging your communities on these off-platform channels, you're going to lose out on a big audience. There's only so much that a store can help you. And now that we're opening up the store and all App Lab apps can go to the store, it's going to be more crowded and competitive, and you're going to have to figure out ways to stand out outside of, the headset, outside of our store. And that's one thing that Gym Class and some others like Gorilla Tag, Penguin Paradise have done really, really well.
Yep. Awesome point. Hey, Richard, welcome.
Hi, Mei. Thanks for joining us today. And Don, hope you're feeling better. I got a little bit sick after my talk in Madison recently as well. So just in the recovery phase here. So yeah, really quick, the app that I'm trying to build, I went to a Tech Chicago event. I'm over here in Chicago, and I was pitching my idea to a lot of people. Somebody made a LinkedIn post and he described my idea as it was the piano vision of VR samurai swordsmanship. So I've got like little like prototype here for like VR katana simulation. And when I'm thinking about lifestyle, I noticed I got a lot of advertisements on Facebook and social media for where they had like the tennis racket where you can, get like a tennis racket attachment, and then they had like a full monthly subscription based, and then also for like hockey. So I think those are kind of good lifestyle applications. So in a similar vein, I'm kind of trying to do something with samurai swordsmanship, which is what I'm like a subject matter expert in. My question personally, it's kind of more of a personal question. But I recently just was offered a job to work for a company that's partnered with Meta. So in a few weeks, I'll be moving to Burlingame to work in the Meta offices.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And also, we've had some guests in the past who mentioned that, if you want to really like look into getting funding for your startup, then like San Francisco is the place to be. So I kind of was interested in moving to San Francisco, and now I have this opportunity. So just, I don't know if this is like good question for the group, but I guess first of all, like if I'm working in the Meta offices, does that make it harder? Like, am I not allowed to get funding for some of these accelerators? And then also just any kind of general information you have to share about what it's like working in the Meta offices, or anything that'd be good to know about before I move out there.
Yeah, great question. So for the accelerator, I don't know if this is the same for Ignition and Start. I'm not as familiar with their requirements but for at least the accelerator, we are looking for founders to be doing this full time, because ultimately we're looking for them to spend, full-time hours producing an app and prototyping that will, produce something by the end of the 6-month period. So if you already have a full-time job, we're not going to consider you. If you have a full-time job and are applying, but you're planning to quit your job and do this full-time if accepted, that is totally okay, and and in line with the policy.
Okay, yeah, and if there's any general, I don't know if you're familiar with Burlingame, but I don't know too much about it, but maybe I can message you offline.
Sure, yeah, if you have specific questions that are more personal, feel free to just message me, yeah, offline or on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
It's also other capital resources there, Richard. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, hi May, Daniel Landau here from
Hi.
So 2 questions and 1 request. I'll make it nice and short. So first of all, in terms of the stage of the company, we are already around 5 years. We have a product out there. We're an ed tech immersive company. Leading the management education higher ed space. So we have the largest library for business schools. So we're replacing the Harvard case studies with immersive case studies. Today we signed a strategic partnership with INSEAD. For those who don't know, that's the European #1 school.
Yeah, great, congrats.
Yeah, thanks. So my question is does this phase of having a product and kind of a sort of established company, does that suit the accelerator? Would that work?
Yeah, good question. So for the accelerator, we are looking for early stage products that are not run by big brands. So for example, if you're L'Oreal or Pinterest or someone, that's a public company like that, we're not looking for you to prototype, experiments with this program. We're really looking for founders that are looking to build new products. If you are a founder and you've already shipped a product, you've been in the XR industry for a couple years, that is totally fine. The only thing is we're looking for new products that you're building. So if you have already worked on something for 4 years, this is not the place for you to refine it and polish it. But if you're looking to launch a new product and you want to use Accelerate as a jumping point to do that, then this could be a good program for you.
Fantastic. Thanks for clarifying. So here's the idea that we are, or the kind of the next idea for our roadmap is lifelong learning. So we've been doing, one-to-many, schools buy, fleets and run that as a kind of a B2B, but we want to launch now with a 3S coming out as a consumer product in that space. Would you consider that something where, more hobbies, people, hopping on various types of learning, would that work for the accelerator?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think this one goes back to like what the user motivation is. Something like, I think we talked about cooking earlier as an example, learning how to cook or bartend or something like that. Cooking and bartending are things that we know people do in their leisure time, to have fun or to relax or just because they really enjoy it. And so something like that, I would consider a lifestyle sort of learning experience. But something like maybe public speaking, where even if you have a direct-to-consumer business model, people who want to learn to public speak typically want to learn it because they're trying to get better professionally, or maybe because they need to do it for a class. And so if the motivation is something else that is a professional or educational or something like that, then we would not consider it a lifestyle experience. It really has to be something where people are motivated intrinsically to go do it by themselves.
Got it. Got it. So just lastly, the request, because I am between business and consumer, maybe it's for Dawn as well. I would love to meet the Meta for Business team. There's tons of questions we have. So that's kind of a request for another webinar.
Yeah,
Awesome.
sounds good. If you have like specific questions, maybe you can send it over to Dawn and then we can figure out like the best way to help you get answered, whether it's a webinar or something else.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you very much.
Yep. May and I were talking about maybe we can bring someone else up from those teams as well. So I'll chat with her as well to try to go there. Hey, Jeffrey, how are you? Welcome.
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity, Mei. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I tend to be verbose, so I'm going to try and keep it as short and sweet as possible.
All good.
I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Visionware X. We've now taken VR and applied it to the screening, diagnostic, and future gamified therapies for learning disorders like dyslexia. So we've taken a proven paper-based system and VRified it. And in doing so, we've taken a subjective-based nature test and very much converted it to a quantifiable and analytical tool. And cutting the analysis time from 6, 8 1-hour sessions down to 1 hour, so we can complete the three-legged stool, right? Cost, time, and accuracy. We get all 3 legs of that stool. And we've been doing that, unfortunately for you, but fortunately here in the future, we've been doing that in Pico system. So we needed to leverage the eye tracking motility within that system. However, we have a collaborative partner that we've just established, and we've been begging them for some time, and working with Ryan Adelman at Meta and Logitech's new VR pen. So now, instead of a child using this to write on a mouse pad, it's too big, it's too bulky, it's not natural. Having a pen for someone with dyslexia is extremely important. So we are literally in revamp mode and having to convert everything from Pico into Meta's devices to enable us to use that pen. And we're proud that we're also implementing not only the pen,
Jeffrey,
but AI.
I hate to cut you off, but I gotta be conscious of time with everybody. Can you hit your question, please? Thank you.
Yep. So the question is that Meta seems to be very much a black box and trying to figure out who should we be talking to, right? And even when you apply into the accelerator or the ignition, what is the timing for review? What is the timing for delivery? And is that more of a grant or is that more of an equity position that you typically take?
Okay, great. I'll answer this in context of accelerator just because I'm not, again, as familiar with the inner workings of ignition. For the accelerator, we are reviewing the applications on a rolling basis, but we're not making decisions until after the application deadline has passed, because we do have, an allotted budget that we want to make sure we're considering evenly across all applicants. So in terms of timelines, we will review your application when you submit it. If it is something that we believe lines up well with what we're looking for, we'll reach out with a request for an interview just to talk through your application a little bit more, ask questions to clarify, anything that we have. And then typically, once we have that, then we'll get back to all the developers and founders that have submitted an application, end of November, early December, with the final results. So that's when you usually expect to hear final decisions for the accelerator.
And Jeffrey, is that grant funding or is that equity funding?
Yep. So all of our funding right now is grant based. So let's say you maybe get a grant for $200,000. We'll divide that grant between 3 milestones. The first one is contract signing. The second one is your delivery of your mechanical POC. And then the last one is at the end of the program when you deliver your vertical slice and your design document. So we'll divide it into 3 pieces, and you'll just get it when you meet the expectations for delivery. It's not equity based. We have some VC partners that are participating in the program. The funding that you get from Accelerator is only for Meta. You're not signing contracts with the VCs. If the VC is interested in funding you as part of the program, they're going to reach out directly and connect with the founders one-on-one. And it'll be a regular deal that you would do as if you were, approaching them directly. We do not get in the middle of that. That's probably going to be more of an equity-based funding approach, the same way that they usually do their transactions. We won't get in the middle of it. All we'll do is connect the founder directly with the VC partners and share any insights on the app and the experience that we've had.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Sure.
That's awesome. Jeffrey, if you want to send me an email, I can try to connect you with Maymay or to the right team through her. Tejas, hello. Maymay, I want to be thoughtful of your time here. Are you able to stay 5 extra minutes so we can get through this question?
Yep, I can go to 35.
All right,
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and thank you
You're
so
good,
much.
Tejas.
So we've been working on a mixed reality app around gardening and outdoor planning. So we're still early, but we've just been working since the Lifestyle Accelerator announcement. We're at a stage where we have a working build as well as some users. And even though the submission doesn't require a working build, would you recommend talking about in our pitch, talking about what we've developed and what our user feedback is? Would that help strengthen our submission?
Yeah, for sure. If you already have a prototype or a working build, please talk about it and what you've learned, what you've done, and what are the things that you want to go do next, because we're really interested in understanding, during the accelerator program, what is specifically that you want to accomplish. A working build is not required. So if you don't have one, again, don't feel pressure that you need to have one, but it is helpful in that it gives us some sense of what you've already tested out, why you might be going in a direction, a certain direction over another. In some cases, some developers have told us hey, we tested this out with some users, they didn't like it, or it didn't work for some reason. We want to opt for this other path. So yeah, if you have any feedback or insight based on the prototype, that will be really helpful to know.
Awesome, cool. I appreciate you, Maymay. Thank you, Don.
Sure. Of course, thank you.
Key thing is make sure that they love you. Hello, Daron, come on up here.
Hey, thank you, Maymay, and Dom for setting this up. So I'm trying to understand whether Float would fit in here. And some of the things you said sounded like it may, and some of the things sound like it may not.
Sure.
Basically, what it is, it's a space that you can just spend some time in. And so people do go in there and just spend some time. It puts you in different meditative states. But people have been using it, kind of hacking it even as a work environment, for example. So just kind of, to have a screen on top of it and just work on top of that as a background and so on. And another thing that might be relevant is that we are looking to at some point add an MR part, right? Where maybe you see kind of an area around you that is reality, but your background is kind of you moving it through these spaces that are helping people focus. And so that might support people doing things with their hands, but they have this environment around them that is kind of lets them focus more. So just by that, is that something that we should consider, or should we leave it alone?
Yeah, good question. So there are some applications that tend to cross categories or touch many categories. And it sounds like this might be one of them. So I would say that if your application is focused primarily on a wellness experience or a game, or media and entertainment, that's not something that we would consider. But if it's something that is not designed specifically for that, but it could have a use case in it, then I think it would be eligible. So for example, VR chat is a social experience. Some people are using it to do support groups, right? For mental wellness. Some people use it for other things. Just because it has a mental wellness application doesn't mean that it's a mental wellness app. So it really depends on how you're framing the experience, what features you're adding, what use cases it can be applied to. Again, if it's just mental wellness, we probably wouldn't consider it for the accelerator. But if it's sort of cross category and it touches a bunch of different things, then we would consider it.
Got it. And one other question, so the product exists, but if we want to say if we want to use the funding to add the MR part, to develop that MR part that would support DIY and so on, would that be considered eligible?
Yeah, great question. So again, I think it depends on how far along you are with the development. If you've already launched an app and it's like in customers' hands, already being sold, then I think it might be a little too far along for the accelerator. The accelerator really is to help start new products. So if you're just in the prototyping phase, you maybe have a build that you're testing out, but it's not really a launch product yet, and you want to use accelerator to continue refining it and building it out, then I think we would consider it for the accelerator.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Karam, come on up here. Spotlighted.
Hi, Karam.
Hey, MMA, like happy to see you again. So my
Yeah.
question is pretty similar to other questions, like whether we feed or not. So I haven't seen in the post like something about education, but I've seen a category other. So what we're doing, we still continue doing this survival game because we're from education. Just to remind everyone, 700 schools, gamified educational simulations. But when I spoke with John and, for example, with Anand, it was always a question from Meta. We need to understand what kind of education we want to see on our platform. And we kind of understood this trade-off. It's like a set of quests, like, and you have set of levels, but I haven't seen anything about education. But at the same time, when I read the post of Anand, I see other categories where real-world activities are enhanced. And we kind of have real-world activities like playing tennis on Mars, like growing something. And just the question is the same. What's your vision for education? Should we apply with this so it's not a fit for the program? Thank you.
Yeah. This I think ties back to some of the other questions on categories that we had. And really the way I think about it is what is like the user intent when they want to use the app. If they're trying to learn, like specifically learn about, I don't know, physics or whatnot to help them in the classroom with subjects, like that is something that we would consider like education with a capital E and not something that we think users would do on their leisure time. But if it's something that, appeals to consumers to do on their leisure time on their own, just because they have enjoyment for it, like cooking, again, the cooking example is a great one. I think then we would consider it, eligible for the accelerator. Just really quick on like the specific example you gave on like tennis, sports and fitness and wellness are not eligible for this program. So if you're learning how to play tennis, then that's outside the scope. But again, like learning how to cook, that would be something that we would consider. Learning how to paint or draw, because it taps into an innate desire for an innate interest, that's okay.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
And Karam, I think there's ways you can frame it differently. Like, hey, this specific experience is for people learning how to garden or something of that sort, and it's for leisure. But then you can also do the other stuff and pay for it yourself on the development side. A lot of this is framing. Hey, Jimmy.
Sorry. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
10-4.
Hello, Meme.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Likewise. So I have two questions. First one, I guess I'm going to ask a really brutal question. Like, what would be the competition for the application? Like, how many people do you guys accept in a rolling basis? You said it's a rolling base, right?
So we're reviewing applications on a rolling basis, but we're not making final decisions until the application deadline has passed, just because we want to make sure that we get a chance to review everyone that does want to apply. We're not currently disclosing the number of founders that we're going to accept. However, what I will say is we're going to keep it pretty tight. The cohort is going to be fairly, a handful, just because we want to make sure that we go really deep with each founder and we're not spreading ourselves too thin. For a scaled program, Start is a great place for that. This is like a program for us to go really deep with each founder, to get into the builds, to give feedback on specific features, et cetera, and really help them through the process of prototyping.
Okay, so essentially we need to fight every single one in this lobby right now.
Like we're it's not just one person, so we're accepting more than one application, of course. So yeah, I mean, I would say just put your best foot forward for the application. Be really, really concise and about why you think there's a market for what you're trying to build, what problems you're trying to address, and how you're going to address it. Like that's going to be really key. Again, one of the big things that we see is people come up with ideas, but they don't really tell us like why they think people are going to use this, why there's a market for it, what problems you're trying to solve, that kind of stuff. And so the why behind what you're trying to build is equally as important.
Okay, so that will have the second question. Well, did I say two questions? Yeah, well, the second question would be I do get distracted by myself often. Yeah, and the second question would be, so do you know a game called Age of Joy?
I'm not familiar now.
So essentially it's an arcade environment. You are situated with like either VR or MR area, and then they gave you arcade machines or like old like retro like back in Nessus era where they have like tiny little joysticks and then you shoot the duck and all that. Long story short, so I want to do something similar to the retro idea, and then I want to expand on it and then make it an interactive storytelling or like a library of walkthrough, but inside your own room while you're in MR, and then expand the story onwards as you interact with the retro items. Say like if you're using a cassette tape, you put the cassette tape in the cassette tape reader, it starts podcasting the walkthrough and all that, and it is one of the really good way to bond between like the older generations and younger, because the younger generations have no idea what's a cassette tape. You show them to it, they will not know what
I hate to rush you, but I want to make sure we get through the questions.
Yeah,
Can you hit the second question for us?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
And that, how does that fit with the lifestyle idea, or like how does the whole entire thing walk through if it were up to you?
Yeah, so I would say again, like, what is the user's motivation in using this app? If they're just trying to have fun in a social way, it feels like it might be leaning more towards a game than a lifestyle application. But if there's some sort of interest that you're tapping into, for example, they're trying to date, they're trying to learn, cook, they're trying to decorate their house, that kind of thing, then the motivation is not just I want to have fun, but as I want to do XYZ and have a fun, have fun doing it. So yeah, I guess it depends on like really how you're trying to frame it and architect it. Without getting into the details of what you're building specifically, it's hard for me to answer that question, but hopefully that helps.
Jimmy, well, after Mei hops off, I'm going to do a rundown and translate this so that we all understand exactly what she keeps saying, because she does keep emphasizing the user intent, motivation, leisure, and interest. So I'll talk about that in specific so we can get through your question there. James, hello. And then Amrit, hello. You're after.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with us, Mei, and thanks, Don, for setting this up. I appreciate it. So we're already funded by Meta, so thanks for that. For our project, my question is, when it comes to these accelerators and other programs that Meta starts, has there ever been a time, or is it unheard of for a partner of Meta to apply for future funding, or are you looking for brand new people?
So is the question if you are already funded, can you get funded again? Is that the question?
Through a different program, yes.
Yeah, okay. So if you have been previously funded, it depends on what channel you've been funded through. Right now, the only exclusions that we have for prior funding for eligibility for accelerator is if you are in the same, if you are accepted to the ignition cohort, we're not going to consider your application for the accelerator just because we want you to focus on one or the other because they're overlapping timelines. But if you've been previously funded for a different product and you have a different team working on something else for accelerator, that is fine. We want to make sure that you have the resources and the people to focus on it, and that if you were previously funded, you don't drop the project altogether just for this new thing. But it should be okay as long as you're not an accepted participant for ignition for this round.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're actually totally fine with our current system, but my question would be if it was like a spin-off or a companion app, like if we made our social multiplayer free to play, for example, and it became a separate app, would that be eligible, or does that fall into the same category?
So you're going to keep the old app and launch a completely new one for multiplayer?
Potentially the app already has multiplayer, but it would be like if there was a free to play version, potentially.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it depends on like how similar it is, because again, the intent of this is really to prototype a new product and experience. And so if you're prototyping something like net new, something that we'll learn, like if this interest or new category has legs, then we would consider it. But if it's really like very similar to what you did previously and it's just a slight tweak, then we would consider it like past the prototyping phase already, and you're past the sort of phase for accelerator.
Awesome. No, that's great to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
James. All right. We have one finale question here. Amrit, come up here.
Hello. Hi, Meme.
Hi. Nice
Pressure's on.
Yes, indeed. I'll try and make it a good one. But I think the first question I have is kind of like a bit blunt, but I just wanted to find out, is there any protection for founders in this application process if they're feeling very passionate about this idea and it's something that they're going to pursue for the long term? I think a lot of us, I guess, in this space have a vision that is projecting into the future rather than what's currently available, some of us at least, and such that we feel like it's already a big, I guess, endeavor to take on. But does Meta provide any sort of protection for those pitches and ideas that it puts out there? And I guess we all act in good faith, but is that part of a contract or an agreement as well?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of the actual pitch that you submit, we do have terms and conditions. When you submit it, there should be a link. I would encourage you to just read through it on the fine print of what we say there if you're very concerned. But the high level is like, in general, we keep things confidential. We're not going to share it with any third party unless we have your approval. We're not going to share it with first party teams either. So we keep third party and first party very independent. That said, people within the team move all the time. Like if I left the team, I can't guarantee that like I won't retain any knowledge of any, pitches that I read. So in that respect, we can't guarantee anything. But in terms of like how we handle the information, we're not sharing it with third party. We're not sharing it with first party. We're keeping it within our team and our management chain just to make decisions.
Got it. And the last question is pretty much similar to everyone else's. Does this sort of project fit? Which is, it's an AR-based social experience that is primarily, I'm trying to target it for Android and iOS currently. And I guess the Meta Quest is projecting into the future, as the hardware progresses and changes in a way that allows some of the capabilities that we currently can do in mobiles. I know this is kind of weird because it's almost like stages getting to a full-fledged vision as the hardware progresses. But basically it's a social experience to bring people together in the real world. I mean, currently no one's going to want to walk down the street with a Meta Quest on their head, but the vision being, in the near future, Meta is going to be part of the movement where that's going to happen, not behind four walls, but outside in the real world. So with that being said, we're projecting into the future again, but the idea being that's going to be there, and we've gotten it. I'm hoping to release an MVP. Haven't released it yet, so hopefully that isn't a red flag for the program. But there is some prototypes that I'm working on in code, so it's not publicly available, but videos can be made to demonstrate where we're at, sort of thing. Yeah, any red flags you see in that for the application, or does it sort of step on anyone's shoes or anything?
So in terms of like development based on technology, we would be interested in seeing what your vision would be for the app in the future. Like ultimately, we want these apps to be, live service apps that have a long-term sort of life cycle. We don't want them to be sort of short apps where people play through it and then you move on to the next thing. However, when you talk about what specifically you're going to want to build during the accelerator, we do want you to ground that in the technology that is available today. And so maybe you can say, hey, my vision is for in 3 years, this app can do XYZ. I'm going to tackle XYZ portion of it given the technology stack today, and be specific about what that is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, but I guess I missed out one key piece of that. So the pilot feature for this that really makes the experience is an AI-based coach that taps into traditional social media, given access to the user's profile across the board. And using that as context, it can be their coach in the real world for dating, for business interactions, for general socialization, to build, healthier real world socialization behavior between humans. I think we've got a bit of a low fidelity version today, where we are with technology. But my hope is to bring that high fidelity version of, us seeing each other in the street and wanting to hang out, but where we wouldn't do that usually.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, was there a question behind that one, or were you just making a
Yeah,
statement?
I mean, the pilot feature is the AI coach, and I'm
Yep.
wondering if that's, I guess, innovative enough for the program.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is a new category that I don't think we've had any experiences yet. So that would be considered under the program. We didn't talk about this much over the last hour, but one thing that we are really looking for is like how your application is building in engagement features and retention features to help to allow people to keep coming back. And so with whatever product you're building, whether it's an AI coach or something else, building in those features to ensure that people are getting value out of this on a regular basis can be really important, because what we're seeing and hearing from our users is, if something feels like a novelty use case where, maybe they try it once and it's really cool, but they're never going to use it again, they're reluctant to pay for it. They want to pay for things that have recurring value. And so whether that be the AI coach or something else, I think that'd be really important. So when you pull together your pitch, be clear about, this is the vision for it, and this is how we're going to engage our users and retain them.
Understand. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That's a great point. Thank you, Maymay, for the time here. I think the last thing when you sign off, can you reemphasize the importance of you think from user motivation first? And so all applications should be focused around what is the intent of this user? Because that seems to be the biggest misunderstanding I saw.
Yeah, and like the reason I keep focusing on that is because sometimes, applications cross boundaries and don't fit squarely under a certain category. And so the way that we like to look at it is like, what is a user trying to do? What is their motivation when they go into the app? A good example of this is like Supernatural or FitXR. These are both fitness apps. In terms of like the mechanics, it looks a lot like Beat Saber, right? You're like, you got things coming at you. You like, wave your arms around and move it to like break a sweat. So mechanically, it looks like Beat Saber, it looks like a game. But the app is really positioned as a fitness experience. And people go there because they're not trying to have fun necessarily, but because they're trying to lose weight. And so that's how I want you to think about your application. It might have different, it might have different like impact on other people. It can be fun, it can be gamified, but ultimately, is someone trying to go there because they're just trying to have fun? Or are they going there for an alternative reason, whether that's to learn how to cook, to design their home, tapping into some sort of interest that they already have in real life. So that's why I'm saying that. Hopefully that helps. If folks have like more questions about that, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to like talk through a specific use case. Oftentimes, some of the most innovative things do cross boundaries. So we don't want to discourage people from like submitting applications where it feels murky, but we do want you to have a really clear point of view of why someone will want to do that, will want to go to the app.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Maymay, for the time. Let's unmute and give Maymay a nice round of applause here. Thank you, Maymay, for coming here. We appreciate that.
This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll do a rundown. You're feel free to jump off whenever you want. But I think a lot of this stuff I have insights around the team, so I'm going to try to help people out around framing. Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. All right. So I'll jump right in. I think, when I was at Meta, speaking from my experience, the biggest thing that I had to learn was that it is a top-down run organization. It starts with Zuckerberg, and then he has his next layer. And so basically, like, what Zuckerberg says is what everyone is trying to fit they're trying to fit a box that satisfies what Zuckerberg is asking for. So a lot of the questions that we asked today were around, this is what my app does, XYZ, does that fit? Which is a great structure of how to ask the question. But the real question and the way you should be thinking about it is, okay, you want leisure, you want people going to my app for the purpose of leisure. That was the one thing, for the purpose of leisure. if you want to get into this accelerator. So your question should be, how do I frame this app I'm building so that when you go to pitch your higher up people and they continue going up the ladder, that word leisure keeps coming over and over and over. And so I think the best thing to take away from this is that the user intent needs to be leisure for a personal interest. And so, taking Samurai Sword example from Richard. So my user intent going into his app could be to learn how to swing a samurai sword. That will not get accepted. He could have the exact same experience in VR, but the way he writes his meta application is this is intended for the 6 million people that currently do samurai swords for fun and leisure. And then that could get accepted. So that's kind of what she's saying at the end there with FitXR and Supernatural versus Beat Saber. Like it's very similar in the experience, but the way that it was framed to meta ultimately made the difference in which team and which program it goes through. So for her specific program, the framework you need to use is the user intent of why they open this app is for leisure because of a personal interest. That was what she kept saying. And so I would write that sentence down and basically insert your app into that sentence. So it's the user intent of why people go to my app is for leisure because of a personal interest. And then you can kind of Mad Libs that to fit what she's looking for. So there's two other programs she talked about. There's Ignition, which is games, and then there's Start, which is kind of like the really early stage, maybe one person team, and Meta provides smaller amounts of funding and some help there. So I think what we should do is send me, I need to help, I guess, kind of direct people through the right door, I think. And we need to go through Maymay for a lot of this stuff. So I think the right solution is for everyone to send me an email with a forwardable that I can send to Maymay. I'm going to categorize those according to Start, which is the really early program, the Accelerator program, which is the lifestyle, or Ignition, which is games. So if you're building a game, don't try to get cute. Go for Ignition. That's fair. But if you're building something that was borderline gray area, I would apply for Ignition. I would apply for the accelerator, the lifestyle accelerator, and use that framework I just talked about, where you're filling in the sentence, the user intent of why people go to my app is for leisure because of personal interest. So send me those emails after, and then I'm going to work with Maymay on figuring out how we can push different people through the right door. I'll stop talking there. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts based around that conversation with Maymay?
One thing I noticed that I thought was interesting was she mentioned when deciding how much funding to ask for, the equation was like, look at how much funding you have, and then look how much you're going to spend in the next 6 months, and then whatever the difference is, they would pay for. As I thought about that, it felt like, so that means you basically are going down to 6 months of runway, if that math makes sense. So I'm curious if anyone understood that differently or has a different framework, or maybe I heard wrong, but it seems nebulous still, like what amounts they're giving out or they're expecting. She mentioned, she said, say you get a grant of $200,000, which is one data point, but I'm curious if anyone has any other thoughts on that. Maybe we could just type them so we don't have to all talk about them, but that was one that got my attention.
I'll speak from because I would write these proposals up, so I have insights into how that happens. So let's say, Cam, you would come to me, you say, hey, we're building Never Met. It's the #1 dating app for the metaverse. We have X thousands of people that have already, paired up with people. It's amazing. I would say, okay, that sounds great. How much money do you need? And then you would say a number. I wouldn't really know whether that's too much or too little from my perspective. I would then go to my team And a lot of this is budget based. So like this is stuff you're not seeing on your end, but on the Meta side, a lot of this is our team looking at our team budget and saying, okay, they allocated this many millions to our team this quarter. How do we deploy that efficiently? Here's, 30 apps we all like, but they all want, $2 million. So like, okay, we can't do that. And so I think her answer was grayish area on purpose, because a lot of this has to do with their situation on the team, which is constantly always changing. The budget's going up and down. And so I think the way I would frame it and think about it is what is the least amount of money that you can ask for up front from them so that you give yourself the best shot at getting a yes. It's a lot easier to ask for an additional 100, 200 grand once you've been working with them for a month and a half. Like people would come to me all the time and say, hey, we need another 100, 200 grand. Okay, great. Sign off. Whereas if you ask for all that up front, it might scare them off. So I think probably you're better off under budgeting a little bit and making sure you get that yes, and knowing what's your minimum viable product you're building with that. And then when the time comes, if you need more capital, that's something you can ask for once they know you and they understand how you work. And then just the last point on how they deploy capital. She talked about it a little bit in 3 stages, but when we would sign a deal, we would give somewhere around like 20% of the overall budget to the developer. When the developer delivers the first major milestone, we might give them another 30 or 40% of the overall budget. And then when the developer delivers the final project, then we would give them the rest of the budget. And so it's bucketed. And so once you've hit your first major milestone, you've gotten your next chunk of cash from Meta, then I would talk about, okay, hey, we need a little bit more to finish this off properly. So that would be my strategy for how I would go about that.
If I could chime in real quick.
Yep.
I just want to chime in because that's exactly what we just did. We're going through this process right now, and we originally asked for under $1 million because they basically told us they have a limited number of games they can fund over $1 million. They're looking for a lot of games in like the 300,000 like realm, smaller titles for at least this program. Obviously, everyone's different. But basically, we got through 2-3 milestones, and then we asked for another like 225,000, and they just approved it. We extended our timeline a little bit, and yeah, I would recommend. It's easier to get in under $1 million, so under budget, and then you can always work on it later once you have proof that you showed a couple milestones.
Yep, cool. That's awesome. Awesome insight, James. Thank you. Any other questions specific around Meta? Otherwise, I have a quick presentation I want to talk through, some things to share. No more Meta specifics?
Don, can we send a couple of ideas to you to send to Mei and then see which one of it is feasible for the accelerator? Would that be a good?
The best way to have that conversations in school, if you DM me there. I'll be thoughtful this week to be in there actively to go over the next 2-3 days to like really try to talk through conversations there. I think the goal in my head would be like we should start applying. You want to start applying as soon as possible, but you also want to make sure, more importantly than that you have the framing. So that part I can help you with in school. And then once you have the correct framing, it'll be up to you to, get the design done quickly and then submitted it through their channels. But if you know you're going for the ignition fund, or you're going for the accelerator fund, tell me that in there, and that'll help me base the framing. I was taking notes specifically on words she was using so that I can try to do some of that stuff afterwards.
All right, that'll be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Don, how much should it be, like a paragraph you send your way, or what are you thinking?
I would send me which program you want to apply for and why you want to apply for that. Let's start with the point she kept hammering home, which is the why. And that's the nugget of the pitch. So I would start with why the user goes to your app for the point of leisure because of the personal interest. If it's the lifestyle accelerator, if it's ignition, I would say, just give me the traditional games pitch. And then if it's start, I would say we think we're too early for the other two programs because of these reasons. But we think we'd be a good candidate down the line. And then we can work you through the pipeline that starts with start and then moves into one of those two programs. But I would definitely start with the why and try to fill in that specific sentence I wrote in the chat around the user intent of why people use the app, because she said that 20 times. Like, that was clearly how she's thinking and how her bosses and her bosses' bosses are thinking about these pitches.
Got it. Thanks. Thank you.
Yep. Thoughts, questions around meta stuff before I move on real quick? Okay. All right. So
Hey,
last week, yep, go for it.
I just realized I don't actually have your email address.
Oh, here, let me put it in. Don at virtualrealityinvestment.com. One of the worst email domains to say over a phone call you can imagine. I've had it for 10 years. It's in the chat as well. All right. So last week we had Inga come and talk with us, and I thought that was one of the best sessions because of her energy and the way that you could tell she had like this oozing confidence around why she deserves capital and why she would be a good investment for investors. And so there was a question around like, how do you build confidence as a founder, and what are the ways that you can kind of like hack that confidence, fake it till you make it. And so I gave some tips last week, but I want to just reiterate some of these real quick. So we talked about the personal board meetings, which I'll give the quick run through for that. I think most of us were there, but there's really 2 monthly exercises I've been doing that have really helped me with my confidence from a business perspective. And so I want to go through both of those things real quick. This is something I do, and I made some examples this time so we can talk through it. This is something I do now once a month with myself, personal board meetings. On like the 26th of every month, I segment off 3 hours to go through this. And it's basically like, if you are a company, what would you be telling yourself at the board meetings? You're the CEO of your own company. You're the CEO of yourself. This exercise was given to me by an advisor last year, and I've been doing it pretty much every month since then. And I can like confirm, at least for me, this has been one of the most helpful things in my life. So for example, like my 10-year goals from the most recent version of this is live near my parents and spend a lot of time with family, have an amazing wife and work on starting on a family, be fully stable and set up with income, location, house. Don't overly focus on the outcome goals, overly focus on the process and enjoy where the journey goes. So that's kind of generalized, but like each month when I go through this, I'm really thinking about this from first principle perspectives and trying to embody this. And it changes on a month-to-month basis. My 3-year goals, I'm making $1 million of recurring annual revenue. We have a nice family business set up. I'm doing hard money loans and running online micro SaaS business. I have a cool life in Florida, a house, a jacuzzi, a pool, like whatever. These are things that I have on my vision board, right? So you can get as detailed into these as possible or not. When it comes to company values, this is something that I've really iterated on each month. But like my number one top priority for what I've discovered over the last 12 months, and it didn't start like this, is having freedom of time and autonomy. And so that's something that I put in here and think about from the first principles perspective. How is that working into my life, our business model, my family life? Like how do I break up my time during the day? All of that, when I think about it, is trying to associate with one of these values. Family bonds, closer with my parents, my sister, my dad. So those are things that, again, like when I do this once a month, it kind of triggers me to now force myself to think about family as a value. And then once I think about that, then I'll say, okay, maybe I'll schedule a dinner with my parents on every Monday this month, right? Or like maybe I'll call my sister right after this. Like there's just little things that I found are really important to do here that are helpful. And then this is where it's more practical. So I have very clear 90-day plan goals that are based around my net worth, based around sales, based around anything that I can associate a metric with. And so this is something I do every month, set up my 90-day plan. What are my top 5 goals that have specific metrics? And then I'm working towards this. So I'm really trying to treat myself like a startup. These are great exercises to do with your co-founder as well, if you want to specifically do it for your startup. And then at the last thing here, this is old. That's no longer the right answer, but the Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept where you're basically trying to figure out where does all of the things you're interested in and good at and enjoy doing intermingle and overmix. And that is the thing that ends up being in the middle. And so if I look at the first month I started doing this 12 months ago versus now, it's much more clear on my most recent one. But like it kind of felt like it took 6 months to really whittle down what I was looking for in my life. I cannot recommend this exercise enough. Even if you're super happy, this doesn't have to be a self-help in a bad way. Like this is just a great exercise to feel proud about yourself and get some confidence. And if everything's going right or if everything's going wrong, equally, I would turn to this to use it, because if it's all going right, you're going to document this stuff and say, wow, like I'm really hitting these goals on a month-to-month basis. And if they're going wrong, then you're still going to be able to look at this and be like, okay, I'm not getting energy and I'm not getting happiness from these certain areas in my life because they don't align with my values. And it'll kind of shift the way that you're thinking about this. So I'm going to share this in the group. It's a template if you want to use it. So you can just copy and paste this to your own version. And then literally I have a recurring event on the 26th in my calendar every month for 3 hours that says, do your personal board meeting. And that it has a link to this. So it's really easy for me to just keep making my new one. This is another thing that I want to talk about. This is something that has been extremely helpful. All right. All right, so this has been extremely helpful for me. This was also given to me from an advisor, or told to do this from an advisor. I'm sure some of you do this maybe for yourself, for your net worth. But you should definitely be doing a version of this for your startup, if not your personal net worth. But every single month, I come into this sheet and I fill out all of the places my money is across my different accounts. I calculate all of that and figure out what's my net worth. And this has been really helpful again for confidence, because even if it's not a huge net worth, the fact that you're being responsible enough and tracking this stuff a month on month is very useful, and it makes you realize, to kind of keep your eye on the prize of why you're trying to build a business for yourself and for your future family. So for example, and this is a template you all can use too, but like if you have and you'll say you have 3 bank accounts, which I do have one, like a business one, a personal one, yada yada yada. I'd literally go into my bank accounts once a month. I look at the number, I write it in here, and then I write it in here. These aren't the real numbers, but the way this works is that it then tells me my period over period growth. So from the last time I put in an entry into the system, how much did I grow my net worth? Since I began tracking my net worth, how much have I grown my net worth from day one? And then it gives me my total net worth of everything added up, how much I have. And then it also factors in a margin of safety, which is like, in case I lose it, I'm safe. Not only that, but it automatically calculates stocks versus crypto versus cash. So this is really important for me, is to know like what percentage am I in cash? For example, when we had this horrible downturn 2 Mondays ago, I was like jarring at the lips because I had a good percentage of my net worth in cash and I was waiting for a pullback like that. Now I still got scared and didn't do what I needed to do, but different story. But this stuff is really important. And then I try to kind of factor in a handicap on everything as well. So I have basically every dollar I account to my net worth, I discount it by about 30 to 40% and just take it off the table because I'd rather underestimate than overestimate. So anyways, this is something that I've been doing that helps a lot with like getting in that mindset of confidence, getting in the mindset of clarity around what you're trying to do. And has been something very helpful. So I'll share the template in this group as well. And then the last thing to talk about where you can get extra confidence from. This one's silly. We talked about it last time, but I've been doing it for years and it's so silly it works. These are called Aqua Notes. And so I'll maybe take a picture of my shower one day, but these are notes that are waterproof with a waterproof pen. The amount of times that you have a great idea or something in your shower that you lose is countless. And so that was why I originally bought this, but I've basically turned this into a motivation system. So when I get in my shower in the mornings, I have my like little written note of what are the 3 goals I want to accomplish today. And then the next morning when I get in my shower, can't miss it because I'm going to shower every day. I have the follow up to write, what happened? Was it good or was it bad? I did that for many years where literally I was doing this on a near daily basis. It got to the point where I was wasting a lot of paper, obviously. And so now I've toned it back to like monthly goals and longer term goals. But I'm a huge believer in having small stuff like this that makes a big difference when you're kind of trying to like find that clarity and like just not go crazy when you're building a company. Like it really is so hard to figure out, what's good and what's bad. It's so difficult. There's so much stress, like so many days you want to quit. I've been there, or you think, oh, I'm going to work every day this week for 8 hours. And then by Tuesday you're napping, like I've done all that, right? Like it's just really hard to maintain. And so I've found these little types of things, that are scheduled on a monthly basis are extremely helpful for maintaining some sort of confidence and sanity when you're going through the entrepreneurship process. So I'll post these links into the chat right now, but I just wanted to say those are things that have like personally helped me a lot, especially that board meeting. And so I would hope everyone gives those a try. All right. I know we're a little bit, sorry, go for it.
Quick, is it possible for you to post all these links later in school, like including your email and all that, just in case? Because I get distracted a little bit and then I couldn't follow all of the links. And by the time I realized, oh, I missed that one that you mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah, the Zoom's call already done.
I'll post tomorrow. I'll post May's recording, and so you don't have to wait till tomorrow if you want to message me questions about how you frame your business. But tomorrow I'll post a recording and I'll put these links in there as well. And then also if you want to just grab it from the meeting chat, they're also available there. Let me just post this net worth tracker 1 minute. Okay. All right. So yeah, so those are things that have helped me a lot. There's like a bunch of other tips and things that, we can talk about if anyone has any questions now, but those are just systems that I use that help me. And I wanted to share them and see if anybody wanted to benefit as well.
Says I need access for the last one.
Yeah, it has my, some of my real numbers in there. I'm just deleting them real quick. That the net worth thing is something that my dad really pushed me to do for years, and I never did it. And then once I started doing it, I realized how it basically makes you think of yourself as a business. And I think a lot of this exercise is about that. It's like thinking about your individual self as a business. And so when I had initially hired an employee to do some of the Spatial Collective stuff at the beginning, when I thought I needed somebody there, we were also doing this on a monthly basis with each other. And so these templates, maybe you're not measuring your personal net worth, but you should be going through your bank account information, like how much money you have in your bank account, how much income you have. Like these are really healthy things that you, if you're not already doing it on a monthly basis, are worth doing. All right, let me open this up. All right, it's anyone with the link, go for it. And please copy these to your own sheet. All right, any thoughts or finale questions here? Awesome. All right, thank you everybody. Message me with anything you need for framing towards the Meta application, and let's try to get people submitted in the next few weeks, because it sounds like Ignition is coming to an end sooner than later. All right,
Great.
thank you.
Don,
Adios.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Bye-bye.
Have an awesome day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Feel better.
Of course. Thank you.